Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's me coming at you again with another video. I know I'm a little late on this, but I want to provide my critique on the Nick Blackwell situation, and of course, it involved Chris Eubank Jr. They had a fight that took place for the British title, middleweight title that is in the England, and I think Blackwell was the defending champion, I believe. And obviously, throughout the course of the fight, Eubank dominated. I just can't see how I can give Blackwell one round. I think he may have won the sixth or ninth round, I think. But I thought, I mean, honestly, I just thought he had, you know, just being just being courteous and whatnot, but being generous. But I think he just got swept throughout the fight. But that's just not the only alarming part of what makes this situation very, very frightening and discouraging. If not very perilous. Now, throughout the course of the fight, I noticed that Eubank was, a typical Chris Eubank Jr. fight. You're going to get nothing but explosion, excitement, combination punching, and boxing ability here and there. With all that combination equals in a very dangerous, explosive fighter. He was hitting Blackwell with too many damn uppercuts in the inside, ferocious body shots. I mean, he was putting mustards in his jab. I mean, he was targeting Blackwell's head all night long. And Blackwell, obviously, in that situation, what it was, he was a stationary tiger. He was just easy to hit. He had no movement, no head movement whatsoever. He only showed a little bit of head movement when he was from the distance, but even when he got inside, he just didn't do anything. He just sat there and was just being stationary to those uppercuts that Eubank was throwing all night long. And to Blackwell's credit, he was pressuring Eubank. He was hitting them some pretty good shots, but it just seems like they didn't bother Eubank at all. But I did notice something in that fight during the middle course of the fight, and I believe in the seventh. Well, in the seventh round, um, Eubank just launched a ferocious assault on Blackwell. He had him against the ropes. Blackwell wasn't doing anything. He wasn't throwing any punches back. And from that situation, I thought that fight should have been stopped. I mean, he wasn't doing anything. He was hopeless. He was in a very perilous situation, and the ref just stood there and did nothing and watched that kid take too much punishment. Unnecessary punishment there. I thought that fight should have been stopped right there. But after the seventh round had concluded, Chris Eubank Senior, his father, Chris Senior, his father, Chris Eubank, before the eighth round began, he walked into the ring and he confronted the referee and told him, "Look, you need to stop the fight. You need to stop the fight because Blackwell is taking too much punishment. Um, withhold his senses and whatnot. He was just getting polarized in there." And so the referee pretty much he actually demanded and told Eubank to get out of the damn ring. Pretty much, I mean, that's how I'm paraphrasing it. He told him to get out of the goddamn ring and let me do my job and let this fight proceed. So during the course of when the eighth round began, I think that during that eighth round, Eubank was pounding the mat, telling the referee, imploring the referee to stop the fight, imploring him to stop it because again, it was just an onslaught from there. It didn't stop because Eubank was continuing to target Blackwell to the body and then hit him with combos in different angles, short shots, vicious uppercuts. He continued to get those uppercuts in, mangled Blackwell's face. I mean, he did a paint job on him. Broke his nose, I believe, and then he gave him a hematoma on his left side of his head. So, yeah, that was very, very discouraging. I mean, very frightening to watch what went down, and what Chris Eubank Jr. was able to display in that fight. And I know some people were giving him a lot of flack for taking this fight because he had an opportunity to go after to take a fight with Daniel Jacobs for the regular WBA middleweight title, and he passed up that opportunity to take this fight. And some people felt that he's taking a step backwards because you were interim middleweight champion, WBA middleweight champion, you were fighting on world level, then you take a step back and fight a domestic opposition. But mind you, he fought Spike O'Sullivan, so that was domestic opposition. So let's not get it twisted. But if they felt that this fight was supposed to be more of a rebuilding stage of his career, then so be it. Because some of his handlers felt that he was put in the Billy Joe Saunders fight way too soon. So, I mean, it is what it is. And speaking of Billy Joe Saunders, he was there at ringside that night of this fight taking place. And Eubank was actually taunting Saunders during the middle of the fight. I think it was the fourth or fifth round where he actually said something to him while he was pulverizing Blackwell. But anyhow, on to the ninth, the 10th round. I mean, unbelievable. Even Chris Eubank Senior at the end of the ninth round, I believe, said, "Look, I don't know what else to tell you. The ref is not going to. He's refusing to stop the fight. I mean, if it goes to the cards, hey, so be it. But if you're mangling his face, you're destroying his face. I mean, what else can you do?" So Eubank instructed his son. So for going forward to the course of the fight, you're going to go after the body. Do not go for any more headshots. And that's what Eubank Senior told his son. Do not go for any more headshots. And of course, his son couldn't help himself with still throwing them vicious uppercuts. But I guess he didn't really put too much muster in those uppercuts because I think he himself felt seeing the damage, the enormous damage that he inflicted on Blackwell. So he was really trying to, to try his best to look, look out for his well-being. Hey, it's a fight. He's got to win it. So, but, of course, on the 10th round came, I think the closing of the 10th round, the referee finally put his foot down and instructed, and pulled Blackwell to the corner and had a doctor look at him. Of course, the doctor waved the fight off. And after the fight, it was discovered that Nick Blackwell had to be taken to a hospital. They discovered a brain bleed, so he had to be subjected to into a medically induced coma, which the neurosurgeons had to repair the damage that was done to his brain, and he's been in that coma for the last couple of days now after the fight. So, which is a very intriguing part about this neurosurgeon is that this is the same neurosurgeon that actually assisted and helped repair Michael Watson's brain after he had suffered a brain bleed during the Chris Eubank Senior fight, which I will get to, which I get to right now. Now, well, before I get into that, which is so very, very dire and scary about the situation, is that Chris Eubank, leading up to the fight, there was a pre-fight press conference. Chris Eubank was asked this question from a reporter. The reporter had asked him about his take on being accused of trying to upstage your son's career or trying to sabotage his career, because it seems like you always want to be in front of the camera. It seems like you're you're the talking piece when it comes to your son's fights. Are you really trying to outshine him? Are you trying to take control of his career? Are you trying to create roadblocks for his career? Eubank's been accused of trying, of making bad business decisions for his son. In some cases, like for example, the split with Frank Warren. I think he's with Eddie Hearn right now, but I heard they're having some, faulty relationships there. I have to go back and check and see. But needless to say, Eubank actually was very appalled by that question. He was very upset about that. So he responded to it in a very polite and emotional way as he could possibly be. He said, "Look, let me ask you something." And this is a very, very, very frightening thing that he said. He said, "Look, let me ask you something. Were the families there? Were the families on the side of Gerald McClellan after he fought Nigel Benn? Were the families there on the side of what's that heavyweight? What was his name? Gary, I think it was Gary. I forgot his last name. But he was a British heavyweight, and he was a very damn good British heavyweight. His only loss was to Lennox Lewis for the British Commonwealth title back in the early 90s. But was Gary Mason, that was his name. Yeah, there you go, Gary Mason. So Chris Eubank said, look, okay, was Gary Mason's family on his side when he had passed away during that cycling accident? So Eubank said, look, let me tell you something. This is my son, and I'm only paraphrasing. This is my son, okay? Now, he's in the very business that I participated that helped make me the man I am today, okay? Throughout my career, I had to watch myself. I had to watch being backstabbed, betrayed, and my career mishandled throughout its entirety, okay? Yes, luckily, I was a 2-division world champion, but He said himself that he was screwed out on pays on purses that he should have been paid for, and there was other lucrative opportunities that he felt he should have gotten, and he was screwed out by his management. So he said, "I'll be damned to sit here and watch my son go through that situation like I did." Okay, I want the best for my son, and I want him to not have the career that I have, meaning not be screwed on the, not being spearheaded on the business side of things. So I'm going to be there for him. I'm going to make sure that he gets all the lucrative opportunities that he could possibly can. So the hell with your questioning. This is all paraphrasing. The hell with your questioning. I'm going to be there for him. I'm going to be there for him at the press conferences. I'm going to be there for him in his training, and I'm definitely damn sure going to be there with him on the ringside in the ringside corner. So don't you ever ask me that question about me trying to sabotage my son's career by trying to upstage him by all the publicity. I can give a damn about the publicity. So that's what he said, paraphrasing. And what's so frightening about that is that he mentioned Gerald McClellan, of all people. And we all know 21 years ago, Gerald McClellan came to London and fought Nigel Benn for the super middleweight title, the WBC title. And during that fight, McClellan suffered the brain clot after that fight due to the clash of heads, and he also had to suffer, not suffer. He took too much. He actually took too many rabbit punches in the back of the head, and the referee at that night didn't even penalize him for that. So he suffered a brain clot. He was taken to the hospital, and in England, obviously, he had to stay over some weeks or so. And they repaired his brain. And I think he was actually put in a medically induced coma to repair his brain. And then, obviously, Gerald McClellan hasn't been the same ever since. He's been, he's at the time he was like 80% disabled. He was partially blind. He barely had any hearing. He had he could barely speak. But he was able to gain some of his his health efficiencies during the later years, but he's still quite disabled as it is significantly. And not only, and what's thing about that is that Chris Eubank, when he was involved in that Michael Watson situation, which was a very, very sad tragedy. However, Michael Watson, over the years after he had his career cut short after that Eubank fight, he was able to recover 100% over the years. Many experts felt that he wasn't going to fully recover, but he eventually did, and he defied odds by doing that. And the grace of God, all power to him, right there. And since after that fight, Chris Eubank was never the same fighter psychologically, because he was so, not saying he was afraid to engage, is that when he had his opponents in trouble in later fights over the latter stage of his career, he was reluctant to go after his opponents and get them out of there. In other words, knock them out. Because after the Michael Watson situation, he didn't want to inflict the same damages to his opponents like he did to Watson. So he was very, very, sometimes in some cases, reluctant in fights where he didn't want to, badly damage his opponent. So, and same goes for Nigel Benn. Because after that McClellan fight, he was clearly not the same fighter after that McClellan fight. That was a very tragic situation. And of course, he blamed himself for that. And to his own admission, I believe that he was psychologically affected by that fight for many years, even outside the ring. So when he competed after that, he obviously didn't have the killer instinct, as you will call it, after that tragedy. So what I do know is this, from what I've heard and what I've learned and what I've read, Nick Blackwell is suspected to make a almost full recovery, meaning that he'll keep his health efficiencies, and he will probably slightly have some bit of deficiencies, but it's not very, very severe. So he expect to make a full recovery, and he expected to be released. I should say not released, but to come out of the coma within the next 24 hours. So that's definitely good news. Definitely good signs of things. But however, the only downside of this is that Nick Blackwell's career is done. He's not going to fight again. I don't care if he's at 100%, but I wouldn't risk him going back into the ring and fighting again. No, I'm sorry. It's always best, to live. They always say it's always best to live and fight another day. But his sake, he can at least live another day, but he can't fight again. That's the one thing he can do. But I mean, there's other opportunities he could do. I mean, he could start training fighters if he wished to. But other than that, yeah, just it's better to preserve your life than going back in here and doing what you love to do, which is a very very brutal sport to compete in. So you don't want to risk yourself and risk your health and go into a fray like that again. So I know a lot of people were blaming, the referee for his incompetency for not stopping the fight earlier. Like I think in the seventh round he should have stopped it. But you should also blame Nick Blackwell's corner as well because they didn't give him proper instructions that night when he fought Eubank. They should have told him to fight from a distance. Don't go into the inside. If you are going to go into the inside, you need to move your head to get out of the way of those uppercuts. And they should have stopped the fight and thrown in the towel when they saw this fighter take that punishment the way he did. I mean, that's all I got to say. The video's done. I'm out.